All right, welcome everyone. My name is James Churches. It's a pleasure to have Rosemary Lloyd with us tonight. Rosemary has a lifetime interest in end of life care and ethics. She's a graduate of Georgetown University and Harvard Divinity School. She's served as a professional nurse, Unitarian Universalist minister, and a hospice volunteer. She studied with Zen teachers Joan Halifax and is a graduate of the Metta Institute for Compassionate End of Life Care, founded by Frank Ostateski. She has led courses in congregational, educational, and healthcare settings on aging and end of life for more than a decade. As an advisor for the Conversation Project, Rosemary provided education and support for clergy, healthcare providers, and families on having values-centered conversations about crucial end-of-life matters. Welcome, Rosemary, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, James, and good evening, everyone. It's really an honor to be back with CCALS and all of you. I was with some of you last summer. We had some of this conversation. So if you were on before, this will be a refresher for you. But I find that it's something that we can revisit all the time. But I'm really I know that when it gets to be about 7 o'clock, I'm kind of starting to wind down and getting ready to go to bed. So tuning in around after dinner, I just really appreciate it. And if you get sleepy and you just say, oh, I got to go, I won't take it personally. So feel free to just relax. And this will be me talking for a while. And also we will have an opportunity for you to do some talking as well, depending on how large a group we get. We had quite a big sign up, but now we're seeing how many people are coming in. We may have some breakout rooms, or we just may talk together as a group. We'll assess that as we go along and see how many people come on. So thank you very much. And James, thanks for sharing that introduction. It's kind of like my professional introduction, but I thought what I would start with, since years ago someone said, if you're going to be a leader of people, you better let them know who they're following. So before I continue with my presentation, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about why I do what I do. And yes, I was a nurse, and yes, I've been a hospice volunteer, and yes, I was a minister. But I think the biggest influence on me was growing up in a household where eventually all four grandparents came to live with our family. So I got to see from an early age that there are many ways to die, even at a great old age. And my mother, who cared for my grandparents almost single-handedly, was an amazing example of what it looks like to take care of others and also learn to take care of yourself. Sadly, I didn't learn the second part as well. When it came to be my turn to be a caregiver, I found that I sometimes ignored the very advice I would give to others and I saw modeled in, for all those years. And so I just want to say, I know that as a caregiver, it can be a privilege, an honor, an act of compassion, and completely exhausting. And that if we don't take good care of ourselves and find some boundaries and find a team, like I know CCALS can be for so many people, it can be dangerous for us and for the people that we're caring for. But that's a different workshop, and I'm sure that that's one that's being offered. But my heart is with people who are caregivers, and also with those of you who are living with chronic illnesses. I've not had a chronic illness, but I was bedridden for a number of months with fractures. And so I have a little tiny insight into what it is to be the person who has to, who gracefully and gratefully accepts care from others. So I thought it would just be helpful for the room, our large room here, our growing room here, and for me to just have a little bit of an understanding of who's with us tonight. James gave me a little bit of an idea, but I'm just kind of curious. You can raise your actual physical hand or use your reaction button. I know you've all probably learned that in the last 2 years of using Zoom. But how many of you are volunteers with CCALS? Okay. And how many of you are caregivers right now or have recently been caregivers to someone who may have died? And if you're willing to share, how many of you are living with a chronic or progressive disease? Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being part of this. I hope that the conversation that we're going to start tonight is helpful for you and for your family members and for the caregiving team that you work with over the course of your lifetime. The Conversation Project, for those who may not know, the Conversation Project, it was a national public engagement campaign designed to help more people talk about what their wishes are for care at the end of life or through the end of life in the event that they can't speak for themselves, which can happen for many people. And why do we want to do that? Because we want to ensure that more people get the care that they want and don't get the care that they don't want. But so many of us are a little reluctant to talk about this or don't know how to begin or don't even know, so what should I be talking about? So I thought tonight what we would do is share a little bit of the fundamental concepts behind the Conversation Project, which I'm going to ask James if you could just type into the chat for us the address, the web address of the Conversation Project, which is theconversationproject.org. So if anyone wants to go online sometime and look for the many free resources that are available there, I think you'll find them helpful. A lot of times people come to a talk like this and they think, okay, I'm going to learn how I'm going to get somebody else in my life to talk about what they want. And what I'm here to say to you is that this conversation starts with you. Whoever you are, wherever you are on the wellness spectrum, however young or old you might be or feel, this conversation is for you. Now, it's maybe a little interesting for you that the title that's currently before my name is Rev, as in I'm an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister. So it won't be surprising then when I say to you that I think this is a profound spiritual practice to have these conversations. To honestly, thoughtfully, gently, enthusiastically, overcoming any reservations or fears that we might have, to consider the fact that birth is fatal, to realize that none of us are getting out of this life alive, to contemplate what I refer to as contemplate the reality of your mortality is a spiritual practice. To honestly look at that and not to be glum, not to be dark, not to be depressed by these ideas, but to realize that when we know that there's actually a finiteness to our life, there's something amazing that can happen, which is we kind of get excited about living the day that we've been given today. Like everything becomes a little more precious each day. And we can stop holding back from what I think are key spiritual practices also, like saying, I'm sorry, or I forgive you. Don't wait. Don't wait to say, I love you. Don't wait to say, thank you. Right? Gratitude, love, compassion, forgiveness. These are kind of the things that make up our hearts and make up our lives richer. So that's kind of the background for why I get a smile on my face, even though I know what we're talking about is not easy and that for many people is a little fearsome even. So again, thank you. I'm honored to be in your company as we begin this conversation. So I'm just looking at some notes. I want to just say that I think a lot of you, or all of you, must know Ron Hoffman. And Ron and I go back a long way to some retreats with some of our Zen Buddhist teachers, Joan Halifax and Frank Ostaseski. And I wanted to bring one book to your attention in case you're looking for some more reading material in this area on the spiritual part of things, but also very practical. And it's called The Five Invitations. The Five Invitations, which is discovering what death can teach us about living fully. And right now, we're kind of what Frank's done. Frank was the founder of Zen Hospice Center in San Francisco at the peak of the AIDS crisis, and he cared for thousands of people at the end of their lives. And over the years, he distilled some of what he learned through the privilege of the caregiving that he did into some precepts, some teachings. And one of the first precepts that he talks about is don't wait. Don't wait. And he expands in that chapter about the two ways of not waiting. One is, this may seem kind of obvious, like, don't wait, do it now. The things I just talked about. Facing one's mortality and opening your heart up to being able to say things like, I'm sorry, forgive me, I forgive you, I love you, thank you, right? The other one is harder. And I noticed this especially in caring for my mother in the last few months of her life, is don't wait, as in don't be waiting. Don't be waiting for the next thing that might be coming down the pike. Don't wait for that future, as in guarding and anticipating. I mean, that's hard for me. I'm someone who wants to anticipate everything. I want to anticipate everyone's needs. I want to anticipate all the things that could possibly go wrong. I want to anticipate, what do I need to have on hand in order to, take care of things for an individual during a pandemic. You should have seen my pantry a couple of years ago, right? I didn't do the toilet paper thing though. But it's don't wait. Don't be sitting there waiting, watching for the shift, the changes. And that's really hard. How do we then, what's the antidote to that? It's be present to just this moment. So that's a fairly advanced concept, practice, one, although I've been at it for a long time, more than a decade. I guess I have to change that introduction. It's been several decades of doing this work, but it's still hard. So don't be surprised if it's a little tricky for you as you look at that as well. So I appreciate that everyone in this room clearly is not waiting to get engaged, not waiting to do the loving thing, not waiting to serve. You're all doing that. And again, it's my honor to be with you. So let's dive in with this idea. Who's ready to ask a really fundamental question of themselves? You ready to do this with me? If you have something to write with or on, great. It's not essential, but it might be helpful. I want to do a little exercise with you. I want us to take a moment, a couple of minutes, to think about a question. And the question is, if you were to think about your life and the care that you would want to receive through to the end of your life, what matters most to you? If you think about the end of your life and you think about what would be important for you to have in place or have around you or be experiencing, what would that be? And a little nuance on this question, to not project far into the future. If you were to tell someone today what would be important to you, if tomorrow you couldn't say it, what would matter most to you? And I'm going to put this question up on your screen to try and make it a little easier. Let's see if this will work. Does this work? Yeah. When you think about how you want to live and what you value most, and it's thinking about this question that will help you get ready to have a conversation with the people most important to you. So I'd like us to take 2 minutes now to just think quietly on our own and write down, finishing the sentence, what matters most to me at the end of life is. And there's some suggestions here for ways to think, like being able to recognize my children, being at home, or maybe being in the hospital with excellent nursing care. Is there some music you want to be able to hear? Sounds of voices, people touching you or not, a beloved pet with you. So just take some time, think about that. And if you can, try writing a few notes to yourself about what comes to mind. And I'll stop speaking now for 2 minutes. So, some of the things that people think about include they're hoping that it will be peaceful, that they'll be surrounded by family and friends. A lot of people think about pain and comfort. People think about music and they think about where they want to be. I've heard some people say things like, nope, not that one. Oh, my goodness. That I want to make sure that the sheets are untucked around my feet. I want it to be peaceful, pain-free, with nothing left unsaid. I want to be able to say goodbye to everyone I love, have one good look at the ocean, listen to some 90s music, and go. So, what are some of your wishes? Now, James, we talked about the idea of going into breakout rooms so that I love for everyone to have a chance to say something and do a little practice of sharing these ideas with someone else. So Eileen, would you be able to break us out into rooms of three? Um, and then what I want to invite you all to do, I know that some of you are just total strangers to each other, and let me say, it's sometimes easier with a total stranger at first to practice sharing some of these thoughts. But if you'd be willing, we're going to break you out to rooms of three. Everyone will have about 2 minutes to talk and share with each other what would matter most to you. And then we'll come back and get some thoughts for the whole group. Okay, Eileen? Six
And
minutes?
please, when you're in there, if you could turn your video on so people can see who they're talking to, that would be really helpful.
Thanks. See you in a few minutes. And you have to unmute yourselves.
Guess she went into one of the breakout groups. Let's see who just joined us. Did you send her into a room? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I think she just left herself. I didn't put her in a room.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got, where's Rosemary? Who's she with? She's with Carol Somerville and Marilyn Ozek. Then all of the others are three. Every room is three.
Great.
So that's good.
Perfect.
And
Awesome.
I didn't start the timer, so I'm a little, but I'm doing 6 minutes.
You can do it at 5 now since it's probably been a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, great.
Yeah, that was a good turnout. Just
So
like
far,
20.
so good. Yeah, 24.
24.
If you take us out, you're down to 22. But, it seems like it's about, less than half who actually come, even though they sign up. So,
Yeah, it's interesting.
although I think depending on the subject matter, the dreaming one was amazing. I mean, that one was like 2/3 of the people who signed up came to that one. And I think maybe just the subject matter is a little more appealing, or I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah.
But I think, if we get our video archive put together and people have access to these videos, we'll be able to spread the message over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we'll, hopefully be able to do that so that, the people who signed up and didn't make it tonight can get a reminder that the recording's available.
Right.
Yeah. I don't
think
really,
it's good.
I mean, Ron likes to do the re-showing, like we're going to do a second showing at a specific time, date and time, which is kind of a good idea. I guess it gives people another sort of a target instead of having to self-motivate completely.
Right.
But I guess we could do one more, a second showing in a couple of weeks or something, and let everybody know that it's available.
But she won't be available, right?
No, it'll just be a recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll, I'll be there. Maybe, we can still have, do breakouts or do it. It'd probably be a small group so we could just have a discussion live,
Right.
with the questions and stuff. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I love her as a speaker. I just think she's really sharp and she knows what she's talking about.
She is. She's
Yeah.
really sharp.
Yeah.
I haven't, I'm sure you've read the 5 invitations.
I'm pretty sure I have, but I don't remember when. I was involved in the Conversation Project I had a friend who went through that process, and I
Mhm.
helped him go through it.
Hi, Shannon.
Hello.
Hi. People are in breakout rooms. Rosemary gave her
So,
introduction.
yeah. So all you have to do, Shannon, is just tell us right here and right now how you want to die.
That's
It's a
it.
very easy question.
Fishing.
I'm fishing. Right on, right on. I want to be shark bait.
That's funny.
That's a great answer. See, I knew you could just come up with something right off the cuff.
That's really the question.
Yeah, I mean, we're really literally asking what would you like to have, how would you like it to be at the end of your life? Like, what are the things that are important to you? And I'm like you, I think being fishing would be great. I mean, I wrote down, I would like to be in nature. I would like to be able to see the sky. I would like to be able to practice Tai Chi, even if it's just in my mind, to be able to express love to my wife and children, to be in a place of choice as to when I leave my body, and to be prepared for this and well practiced. So I've always liked it with these stories about these Zen masters who tell the whole temple, like, well, I'm going to be gone tomorrow morning around 8, so you better be ready for whatever's next. And then they just leave when they're ready to go. I say, why not?
Right?
Why do I have to get kicked out? Why don't I just say, hey, like, I'm going to fly before,
See ya.
necessarily
Peace.
get evicted,
Peace out.
Peace out.
Yeah, people used to say to me when my husband was sick, "Oh, Shannon, that must be awful, um, being with someone who's slowly dying." And I said, "Well, actually, it's great because we've told each other, how much we love each other, how much we appreciate each other. And that's much better than losing someone in a car wreck all of a sudden, you know? You
Mm-hmm.
don't get to say goodbye."
Yeah,
That's right.
that's a
right.
very good point. It's kind of one of those long goodbyes, right?
Yeah. You
Mm-hmm.
get to, you get to talk everything over, which is kind of awesome in
Yeah.
a weird way.
Yeah, there's something beautiful in that, and I think that's one of the things that CCALS tries to encourage with all of the families, to take the risk, have the inquiry, go to those difficult places and see what you find.
Yeah. They're coming back in about 10 seconds.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Shannon, for your wisdom.
Sure.
I'm serious.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. I hope you had a good experience in your breakout room. I was surprised and happy to find myself in a breakout room, and I heard some wonderful things. Because we're not a giant group, I would love to bring some of your conversations back into the whole, if you would be willing. Either you can raise your physical hand or use your reaction button to raise your hand if you're willing to share either something you discovered that about for yourself, or something you heard that was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, but someone else in my group mentioned it. And now I want to be sure to talk about that with people in my life. So who would like to be brave and unmute themselves and let us know you're going to speak? Robert, Carol, would you unmute yourself, please, and tell us what occurred for you?
I guess I've done it now, haven't I, Rosemary? I was it was just the three of us, and I had a opportunity to write down some of the things as you were describing the questions. And as I was telling the the breakout room, my wife died about 9 months ago, July 5th,
Mm.
bulbar ALS, which took her ability to speak away from her she lived for about 3 years after the diagnosis. So for the last year and a half, she couldn't communicate verbally. And had I, there was no day that we could mark on the calendar and say, Lee, you have to tell me you love me on this day because tomorrow you won't be able to speak anymore. It doesn't work like that. So if there was one thing that I would like to get back, it was to hear her say, I love you one more time.
Mm.
And she wasn't able to do that. And thinking about, when the bell rings for me, I'd like to know that that my life had some purpose and meaning, that I was able to do the best that I could with whatever physical, mental gifts that I was given,
Mhm.
that I didn't waste uh, opportunities that were presented to me. And I want everyone to have one hell of a party after I go. So I'll miss it, but my family has never let a funeral get in the way of a good party. So yeah, it's the Irish in us, I guess.
Wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Robert. And I'm very sorry for your heartbreak and the void that's in your life. Yeah. Thank you. Would someone else be willing to share what they heard, either something they heard that surprised them about, oh, I'll make sure I include that in my list of things to tell people, or just want to share? Nikki, would you unmute yourself, please, and tell us? You're still muted. You have to click the microphone icon down the lower left. No? Okay, maybe try and figure it out and we'll see if someone else can speak. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, no, we can't hear you. Dolly, yes, would you unmute yourself, please, and tell us?
Sure. I shared that my husband has ALS, but I'm also a caregiver. I was for my elderly parents, and my dad died about 2 weeks ago, and had the opportunity to be introduced a little bit to hospice. And I am a social worker, and I knew that I wanted my dad when the opportunity was presented. I just knew that that's what I wanted. And we did an intake with the social worker. It was an inpatient because we thought he had about maybe a week. But I was so excited when we did the intake because they laid out all of these amazing, wonderful things that we would have opportunities, whether it was music or he would have had massage. And we met with the chaplain, and it was just like a warm hug that I was looking forward to experiencing with him in his last days. And unfortunately, he died the very next morning. And I thought we were going to have more time in terms of being at the hospice facility. But I don't think there were any words left unsaid, to be honest with you, because he was 96 and I've been a caregiver for him for a really long time. So, but I just knew that that's kind of what I wanted for myself, was the hospice experience, as opposed to being in a hospital with alarms and bells and lights and people coming and going. And I just want to be surrounded by family and friends and comfort and laughter and joy and music and flowers and pets.
Well, you've got a beautiful vision for yourself, courtesy of the work that you did with your dad. I mean, he gave you that last gift of investigating that for yourself in a way that actually looks like a gift to you, to be in hospice and the support team that they could provide. And I want to just say that you named some very specific things about being with family, that laughter was good, right? I heard that there was laughter, and fresh flowers were good. So that's in contrast to someone that I spoke to in a breakout room who said, please no fresh flowers, because they reminded her of her own father's death, the smell, that they're not an appealing thing. And I asked her, I said, well, who knows that? Who knows you don't want to have fresh flowers at your bedside if you can't speak for yourself? And she said, well, no one yet. So, and there were some other things, prayers. She would like prayers. Someone would like prayers said. What kind of prayers? Oh, there's a very specific Catholic prayer. It's called the Rosary. She'd like to have that being recited at her bedside. Who knows that? So think about the things like if you say, oh, I'd love to have music playing. Well, let's not leave it up to your 13-year-old nephew to come up with his playlist for you. Be specific. You know, I'm like, no screechy violins, please, you know, but a little chant music, I would like that. Or some Linda Ronstadt. You know, you have to kind of be a little specific about things. It's like I say blue and you each have your own idea that comes to your mind. So this exercise that we just did is how the conversation project works. It's just take the time, set aside some time. You thought about that for 2 minutes and you each had about 2 minutes to talk, that 4 minutes of your life. And some of you have come up with some really interesting insights and specific things that you would like for yourself. And it's something you can share in a conversation. Oh, Nikki has sound. Nikki, we're gonna please share and then we'll move on to thank you.
I'll make it quick, but I was reminded in my group by a gentleman of the importance of silence. That's something he said that he wants to have. And I mentioned that I'm about halfway through reading the 5 invitations, and it's something that is so stressed in that book. And I said, I can only read small portions at a time because there's so much to think about in every word that he speaks. But he also speaks to the importance of silence and listening. And I'm a hospice social worker, so I don't always remember that. You know, it's sometimes I have to be reminded it's not so much about the task and the doing, it's much more about the listening. So I was very glad to be reminded of that in my group.
Oh, Nikki, thank you. That is so important. And you know, if you're interested, this book is rich. I know people who have been spending months taking, you know, getting a couple of friends and reading it together. But I will also put in a plug for a free opportunity to work with Frank. He is leading a 1 year or 6 month investigation using the book, the 5 invitations, where you can do it online and he'll be teaching and then you'll be reading and then coming back and talking with one another. So if you ever want to be with a wonderful teacher with the face of an angel, look at the face. Oh my goodness. He's just so full of light. I will put it in the chat. It is through Upaya Zen Center, and you can look this up if anyone wants to join it with Frank Ostaseski. Okay. So thank you. So some of the things, what I was saying is this is the exercise. It's taking time, pausing, intentionally pausing, reflecting on some questions like what matters most to you, writing it down, because sometimes it's just easier to write something out to get your thoughts out. We're different kinds of learners, and I know that, and expressors, but sometimes writing out your thoughts, or at least writing notes, is a good start to then being ready to say to someone, you know, there's something I'd like you to know. I'd like to talk to you about. Now, one person in our group said, well, it's a little easy in this room. This is a safe space. And, you know, there's not a lot at stake for me to share with someone I've never met before, but to share with someone in my family, someone who might be caring for me, someone I might leave someday, someone who loves me, it's a little bit harder. So how do we even start to have these conversations? Well, I'm going to tell you again that we can go to the conversationproject.org, and there's a whole workbook that you can download for free and use some of those questions to help you think more specifically. It's not about things like, do you want to have a breathing tube? Do you want to have a feeding tube? It's not about that. It's about the quality of life that you want through the end. But how to start the conversation? Well, I'd like to take a little pause and show you a short video that takes a slightly humorous look at this, how to start having the conversation. I hope that'll be okay with you to bring a little lightness into this. Okay. I have to do it this way.
Mom, Dad, sweetie, can we talk? Everyone, dies.
So, how do you want to go?
Do you have a plan for your end-of-life care? Because I don't. Don't take this the wrong way, but you're not getting any younger.
So I was binge watching Game of Thrones, which reminded me that everybody dies.
Oh. You've heard of a birth plan, right? It's like that, only the opposite. I need your help with something. Can we talk?
My biggest fear is losing you, and that I won't know how you want me to care for you toward the end.
Remember what happened to Aunt Maria? I don't want that to happen to you.
You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you.
People talking in the mirror, practicing ahead of time. It's not always easy. But what I love about that video is the look of relief on people's faces once they kind of found some words. And did you feel it too? Like it's like I got it out. I said it. We started the conversation. 80% of Americans say they think that it's important to talk about this, and 80% have never had a conversation. When we talk with people in workshops all over the country, all different ages, the people talk about their reluctance and their fear, their worries. And then they start to have the conversation, and over what they reported back to us was what a relief it was to have finally had the conversation. And it's an intimate conversation. It's a relationship strengthening conversation, because you find you're talking about all kinds of things that are important to you. And what's a better conversation than that? Weather, sports, what you ate. These are conversations we have a lot, but this is a meaningful and deep conversation. When you think in this moment about, oh yeah, I might have this conversation, I should have this conversation, who do you need to talk to, do you think? Who's on your list? Who do you want to have a conversation with? And I ask this because, a lot of times we think that there's just one person we need to tell. And I want to sit here and tell you, please have a conversation with at least 2 people. And if you have a circle of care that's wider than that, would you please ensure that you have a conversation with all of them? I know there's some social workers or maybe even some chaplains on this call. I was a chaplain at a big Boston hospital for a little while. And one night I got called to the ICU because there were 2 sisters who were fighting loudly in the patient family waiting room. And I thought, why did they not call security? Why did they call the chaplain? But I was who was called. And it turned out that in this family situation, there was mom who was in the ICU and 2 daughters. One daughter had been living with her mom and taking care of her for about 15 months. And they'd had probably lots of casual conversations over a period of time, maybe making dinner or cleaning up the kitchen or doing laundry together, who knows? But they were together and things got said and things got learned. And there was another daughter who'd been somewhat estranged from her mom and was living in California until she got called back east because it was time. And when the second daughter, the one from California, came into the ICU and the conversation was about putting mom on comfort care because mom had said, I'm done. This daughter lost it. She was like, no, 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 we have to do, there's more we can do. And the thing was, she wanted more time. And I get that part. We understood that eventually. But the bigger thing was when the daughter who had been home said, well, mom told me this and mom told me that. And she told me that when it came to this, she wanted to stop treatment. And the second daughter looked at her and said, well, she never told me that. And that was an argument that maybe could have been avoided if both daughters in some way had gotten that information, either in a conversation or in a letter, so that one wasn't left feeling like, I just didn't even know that. So please include all the people that you think you need to include. Okay. The Conversation Project goes so far as to ask you to really visualize having your first conversation with someone. Like, you maybe pick one person you want to start practicing with and having that conversation, but then get really specific. Where could you have this conversation? Like, think of your person and think, where could I talk to that person? When could I talk to that person? And could you set a deadline for yourself? Like by Easter, Mother's Day, the 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Could you pick a time where you said, not too far out in the distance, but next week, the next time I'm having lunch with someone, practicing the conversation. I used to joke that my favorite way to have the conversation was driving at 50 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour with the doors locked, so no one could get out, so we can make sure we had this conversation. But it might be a walk somewhere, or the next time someone comes over to visit and sit with you. There's something I'd like to talk to you about, or I need your help with something. These can be icebreakers for starting the conversation. A movie that you saw, remembering someone in your family or a friend who died. Like, that was great the way that happened, or I never want that to be how it is for me or for you. This conversation can make a difference. I'll tell you, let me just check my time, make sure I'm not. Okay, I have time to tell a story. So I told you that all 4 grandparents lived with us growing up eventually. And my paternal grandfather was 95 years old. And I was, well, when he was like in his 80s, I was living in Rochester, New York, and he was living on Long Island. And I used to drive down to see my family. And there was one time I was leaving and I got overwhelmed with this feeling that, grandfather's in his 80s, who knows when he could die. And I was very sad, and I didn't get in the car, and I went to say to him, I was crying, and he said, what are you crying about? I said, I'm afraid I might not see you again. And he said to me in his thick Italian accent, which I won't try to replicate here, but he said, Rosemary, I'm an old man. I've had a good life. I'm not afraid to die. So if I die, I'll see you. And if I don't die, I'll see you. So either way, I'll see you. This was sort of like his theology and his end of life thoughts all in one thing, right? So fast forward many years, I'm back visiting at my parents' house, and my grandfather is living there, and I'm sleeping in the bedroom next to his. And in the middle of the night, I hear him call out. And I got up to see what was going on. And he was calling for my father, who didn't hear him. And I said, "What's wrong, Grandpa?" And he said, "I feel cold." And I said, "I'll get you another blanket." And I went and I woke my mother because I had a feeling about what I was seeing in him, that he was cold for a reason. And the reason was he was going to die. So she got up with me and we looked at each other across the bed clothes, and she's, we nodded. And I went and I woke my father. It was really truly the middle of the night. And I sat down the edge of the bed and I said, "Dad, you should come in and be with Grandpa. It's time for him to die." And my father sort of panicked and he said, "Well, call 911." And I said, "Dad, Grandpa's 95 years old. If we call 911," and I then proceeded to tell them what they would have to do, because that's what you have to do if you don't have a do not resuscitate form on your refrigerator someplace to show them. And I said, "Let's not do that to him. Let's just be together. Let's be around him, and let's keep him company for a while." And I lived in the kind of life where, not too far away, my two uncles also lived. So I called them in the middle of the night and woke them, and they came. And the three adult sons are around the bed, and my grandfather's lying there in bed. It's like a movie, with the sheets, and everyone's around the bed. And he took his last breath and he died. The reason my father could void calling 911 was, I forgot this in the storytelling, and I apologize, that makes not a good story, but I told my father, Grandpa told me he's not afraid to die. That was the part that I forgot to tell you. He said, "I'm not afraid to die. He told me that. So let's go be with him." And that is what settled my dad down. It's what settled everybody down. And my grandfather was able to have the things so much of us want: to die at home, surrounded by loved ones, without pain. It was because we had a conversation all those years ago. So things like that will stay in someone's head and someone's heart. And what you tell people may guide their decision-making in the event that you can't speak for yourself. So, great. I want to make sure I leave lots of time for having questions and conversations. But what I want to just do is address one or two other practical pieces. And that is making sure that you have someone who will speak for you. And that is having a healthcare proxy. Does anyone on this call not know what a healthcare proxy is? Raise your hand if you don't know what a healthcare proxy is. Okay, so even one person, that's great. A healthcare proxy is that person who will speak for you and make decisions on your behalf in the event that you cannot do that for yourself. So if you are up walking around and speaking and cognizant of everything's going around, or in bed, but you can still speak for yourself, your healthcare proxy doesn't come into the mix. But if you get into a position where you cannot speak for yourself, let's say you're coming out of anesthesia and there's a complication and someone has to make a decision about what to do next, that's your healthcare proxy. If you've fallen and hit your head and you're unconscious and we have to decide what to do about you, your healthcare proxy can make those decisions for you. If you have a debilitating disease and you get to a point where either because of your cognition or your muscle control, you cannot speak for yourself, your health, and you can't communicate in any other way, your healthcare proxy will make those decisions. It's actually a legal document. And in Massachusetts, it's a free document to download at, I recommended doing it at, I'm going to type, well, James, you can type this in for us, at Honoring Choices, MASS, honoringchoicesmass.com. You can download a healthcare proxy form there and all the instructions that you need to get that. You can print those out and give them to people for their birthdays, inside their birthday cards. You can put it inside their Christmas cards, whatever, it's It's always good to review this. I say birthday because it's good to review this on a regular basis. Who is your healthcare proxy? Because sometimes things happen. I know friends whose spouses were their healthcare proxy, and then they got divorced. And I thought, I don't think you want that person to be your healthcare proxy anymore. Or you found that your person that you named, you forgot to tell them. And then you find out when you explain what you really want, they can't honor your wishes. You don't want that person to be your healthcare proxy. Who do you want to have be your healthcare proxy? It doesn't have to be your next of kin. It doesn't have to be a spouse. In fact, I will tell you that for years, my husband was my designated healthcare proxy. And then I heard someone in one of my workshops say, oh no, I would never have my spouse do this. His job is to hold my hand and cry, and will not be good in this situation. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's my guy. He would be terrible as my healthcare proxy. I need someone who has just a little bit more remove and is not going to fall to pieces. And as much as my son loves me, I know he's the guy who will be able to have a little more distance. So it doesn't have to be your spouse. It doesn't have to be a family member. It can be a dear friend who's willing to do this for you.
And it was honoringchoicesmass.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Honoringchoicesmass.com. So think about who that person might be. If we had time, I have another video and it actually shows some ideas of people you don't want to have be your healthcare proxy, like the person who is always out, trekking in the Himalayas. You want someone who's going to be around, would be helpful, or nearby, or available by phone at least. Someone who can speak up in the healthcare system. And you all know that's not always easy. So someone who's got some spine and a loud enough voice to advocate for you if that should need to be. Someone who loves you is helpful. Someone who respects your wishes. Okay. You also can have a backup person, which is also a good idea in case they can't reach the person that they're trying to reach. Have a backup. Now, this is also I want to acknowledge this can be a trigger for some people. And what I mean by that is some people feel like I don't have a person. I don't know anyone who could do that for me. And if that's your case, or you run into someone for whom that's the case, I would encourage you to continue thinking about who might be possible. And if not, and you have an underlying disease process, to talk to your healthcare provider about what's called in Massachusetts, it's called a MOLST, MOLST, which stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And it's a way that you can articulate your strong medical treatment preferences into a form that would be in your records. And the way that things are now, a lot of stuff is on a computer. If you ever want to talk to your doctor or nurse practitioner about your wishes, you can do this. I would just suggest that you let them know in advance of making your appointment, or let's say you're at a visit and say, on our next visit, I want to be able to talk to you about this, so they can chart your preferences, because it takes a little bit longer than some of our 15-minute visits allow. And they can actually bill for it separately. It's like there's a code in those long books of codes where they can actually spend the time talking to you just about this, about your wishes for care through the end of life. And they're very happy to, most of them are very happy to have this conversation with you. So I feel like I've just done all the talking. And since we're a small enough group, I would like to open the floor for questions and conversation. Can we do that, James? Will that work for you all? Okay.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And if you want to show that video, I think we probably have time. I don't know how long it goes.
Oh, it's just another short one. Let me look for it. Let me see if it's right here. How did I do this? Yeah, of course I closed it by accident. Well, why don't we see if anyone has any comments or questions and see if I can look for it in the background.
You should. Quite a few people are unmuted. Does that mean you all want to speak? Somebody want to raise your hand and get started? No?
Okay, I'll show you one more video. Oops, sorry. I'll show you this video about choosing a healthcare proxy.
Be your healthcare proxy? Like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to? I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right?
Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to. If I'm in town, check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
Oh, I could never let you go. I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Well, heck yeah. I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going with. You never let them resuscitate. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never. I got this. I totally got this.
How can you even talk about this? I can't, okay? I just can't. Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No, I can't talk right now.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay. So the cat's like, bleh, and then he's wah! Oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, we'll get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be easy. I mean, I'd be sad, but I'd have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke for her. So I think I can do that for you. Let's talk about what you would want.
So there are resources, lots of resources on the Conversation Project website, lots of resources on honoringchoicesmass.com. And I hope that you'll take advantage of those and start that conversation for yourself, because the conversation does start with you, and then invite that conversation with the people closest to you so that you will know, in the event that you have to make decisions for somebody else, what really matters most to them. So
I had something, Rosemary, that I would like to ask you, and it's related to my grandmother. Had a very clear do not resuscitate request when she went into the hospital. And she was in her mid-90s, and she really, she was getting an elective surgery, a procedure, which was risky at her age, but she decided to do it anyway, and she wasn't coming out of the operation well. And they resuscitated her, and they put her on a ventilator for a little while, and she did recover, and she ended up living for several more years. But she was kind of mad when she heard that happened, and we were all sort of like, why didn't you pay attention to that, and they were just like, well, in the moment, we just thought we could save her, and it just kind of happened, and it felt like the right thing to do. And that's all that the doctors and the nurses said. So I wonder how common that is for people, that they have their requests and then they kind of get ignored.
I don't have the statistics on how common it is. And I would say that if this happened during surgery, it's a little bit grayer area, because you're sort of like in there, you're kind of being resuscitated anyway when you're in surgery. I mean, you're so like suspended. I don't know how often it happens, but it does happen. It happens too often that our wishes aren't respected. And I'm happy to say that one of the things I think the Conversation Project helped do over the last 10 years is raise the bar or raise awareness inside of institutions and among the general public about the importance of having conversations so that one's wishes are respected. And I'm really sorry that happened on the one hand, but I'm glad that your grandmother had a good outcome, that she wasn't resuscitated after too long, and she, was resuscitated only to be in a vegetative state, for example, which could have been a terrible outcome in that situation. And it's why having a strong advocate is important, being very clear in one's communication. But yeah, in that moment, especially in surgery or in post-op, immediately in post-op, I'm sure it's a tougher, it's like they're just designed to do that in that particular moment. Eileen has her hand raised.
Yes, thanks, Reverend Rosemary. I have a question with one of the resources that we use. It's called 5 Wishes. And I just wanted to find out your thoughts about that resource and how we can best use that.
Yeah, I love 5 Wishes. So 5 Wishes is comes out. I think you have to look. You can look up 5 Wishes online, or Aging with Dignity is the host organization. There is a charge for their particular form, but it's a terrific guidebook for your conversations as well. They get a little more specific about things like medical interventions, help you to kind of ease into that conversation. And they also have a section. I think it was Robert was talking about how he wants to be remembered. Like there's a section for like your memorial service, even like, here are the people I would want to have involved. Here's how I'd want to be remembered. So it's a terrific resource. I'm glad that you use it. And I'm sure it's available. The Conversation Project is available in a variety of languages. For those of you who work with various patient populations, you can get it in, I don't know, half a dozen languages at least. And I think 5 Wishes is also available in various languages.
Unless you notice any changes.
And we have a number of them. So if there's anyone that would like a copy, just let me know and we can send them to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has anyone else had that experience that James had with his family of you were very clear about wishes, or someone in your family was very clear and they were not respected? Mary, you look like you're shaking your head that happened to you. I don't know if you're interested in sharing your story. You're muted though.
I was just looking for the raised hand emoji and I couldn't find it. It happened to my mother, who was in the hospital. She had a meningioma, had to have surgery. She had a DNR in place. Post-surgery, she was in the ICU. And the doctor, this is 10 years ago already, the doctor told me, even with a DNR, 24 hours post-surgery, that sort of voids it, believe it or not, because by going to surgery, you're basically telling them you want something done.
Right.
I don't know if things have changed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. The surgical piece is is the complicating aspect there, because when you go in for surgery, you're basically in a suspended life state as it is, because you've stopped breathing on your own. In some surgeries, your heart is not beating on its own, if it's open heart surgery, for example. And you've said, I really want something done. So they're like, maybe you thought you didn't want anything done, but you're here and you're having something done. We think, and there's a little bit of that, we think we know best in the moment. So the surgery part is harder. The part that makes me that's really complicated for me. And I think in Massachusetts, we're trying to do better in having conversations with the EMTs in our different communities, the emergency medical technicians, that if you have your wishes that include a do not resuscitate order and it's available in your house to show to them, you can kind of flash it at them, then they're really grown in their ability to be respectful of that DNR. It used to be that they would just, if they heard a call from, your watch or your special device that you have, or someone called and said, I think they're on the kitchen floor, they'll break down your door and just start resuscitating. They won't look first to see if it's out on the refrigerator. But they're getting better at it. They're getting better at it. Any other comments or questions? Someone on our call early in my small group was talking about how down in Florida, she visited people at hospice, and the hospice in Florida is just beautiful. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I've got mine picked out up here because, really having cared for a number of people in my life, and it was a privilege. I decided that I would prefer myself personally to be in a residential hospice setting, so that's very beautiful, not a nursing home, a beautiful hospice setting, so that people could come visit and I could have great nursing care and people could go home and get some sleep and then come back and see me again. But different people have different wishes, and I've communicated that with my family, because lots of us, really say what we want most is to die at home surrounded by loved ones, right? That's just not my personal preference. So I've had to make that clear, because the general preference is to be at home. And to make sure that I'm actually the line in there, which is like, don't tuck the sheets in too tight around my feet. I hate that. Even though I was a nurse and used to make those tight corners on everybody's bed. I'm so sorry. And to all those people who I tucked in too tightly.
I was wondering if I might be able to ask you, Diana, if you would be willing to say a few words, if you're willing to, about your mom. And you were just down in Brazil visiting her over Christmas, and I'm wondering if you have if she has made clear what her wishes are, and whether or not that's a conversation you would feel comfortable having with her. If that's okay, and if you don't want to, that's fine too. But since you're one of our wonderful volunteers, I thought I would pick on you a little bit, if that's all right.
It's interesting you ask me that, because I was thinking about it. We never had this conversation with my mother before. And I was here listening to her, Rosemary, and thought, oh my goodness, we never asked her what she wants. And even my father, we never gave him a chance to think about it, so he can develop with her this planning. And I'm here wondering about it. I think I have to write down things about it so I can think clearly after this meeting also. And there's a bunch of books you sent to us, right? I want to read some of the books about it. And yes, we have to have this conversation before. I think in Brazil, we never have a chance to talk about it, like in a meeting like this. I never heard about it there. Never, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some dramatic cultural differences.
Yes.
And I worked with the Conversation Project all over the country for years. So I worked with lots of different populations, and people would tell me, oh no, I can't talk to my mother about that, or I can't talk to my grandfather about that. That's just like not right in my culture. But then I would ask if some of these other folks would, is that true? Do you really not want to talk about it? And like this, I remember this Korean grandmother piping up and saying, no, I've been dying to talk about this, but no one will let me talk about it. So it's, it may seem taboo, and it may be taboo in some cultures, but maybe that's why the conversation is more about just what matters, or getting around to saying, tell me about how when, Uncle Mike died. What was that like for you? Oh, was he home? Is that what we should do? What should we do?
Yeah, that's smart.
A lot of people mostly will, when they start, they want to talk about their funeral or where they want to be buried. And what we know is that there's lots of decisions branching along the tree of life that we have to make decisions about. And you want to know. Now, let me say, we love, when we love people and we've grown up with them and we've lived with them, we can have some good ideas, some clarity, about what they want. But sometimes it's our projections about what I want, I think my mother wants, and it maybe isn't true. So it might be like, I was thinking, not to be maudlin, Mom, but I was thinking about this, about my life and what might happen. And this is what I would want. Is that what you would want too? Or are we the same that way? Are we different that way?
It's funny because I live here with my husband and my son. It's only the three of us, and everybody else is back in Brazil. And if something happened with me here or with the three of us at the same time,
Yeah.
So I can try to connect to her about this, given I was thinking if something happened to me, and then I can go deeper with her,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
And the materials are available in Portuguese. I'm almost 100% sure about that.
All right. Perfect.
Look for them in the translation section.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Looks like there was somebody else had their hand up there. Who was that was just had raised their hand?
Sharon?
Yes. There are a couple of things I wanted to bring up.
Can I stop you for one, Sharon? We can't see your beautiful face. Can you tilt the screen?
I'm sorry. I don't know if you want to hear what I have to say, but I really don't want to be on camera.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yes,
that's perfect.
Fine.
Perfect.
So yes, there were a couple of things I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if most of the audience tonight and the participants in this group are from Massachusetts or not. But in Massachusetts, we have something called death cafes, and I don't know if people are familiar with that. They usually, prior to COVID, would meet usually once a month. And it sounds morbid, but it really wasn't. It was very educational. It was sort of something like this, but in person. And you can talk about loved ones, or you can talk about your own death, or you could, all kinds of things to do with death. And then there'd be an educational component along with it. So I wanted to bring that up because I think it does help with the conversation a lot, maybe not at first because it takes a while, but then you get to know people, and people share back and forth their thoughts. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was medical aid in dying. And I've been volunteering in medical aid in dying now for the past 5 years.
Wow.
And it's something that I'm hoping will pass. It's not that it would be for everyone, but for people who would choose that, that I think I feel strongly that it should be a right that we have, that we needn't suffer, that I saw my father suffer, who was in hospice. My mother was in hospice and she suffered. I was their caregiver for my mother while she was at home. And she had home hospice, and my dad was in a hospice house. And I do not want to suffer the way they did. I'm not afraid of dying. Like a lot of people, I'm not afraid of dying. but I'm afraid of suffering. I don't want to suffer. I don't see any good in suffering towards the end of my life. So I'm fighting strongly to try to get medical aid in dying. And I don't know if people would want to look it up and find out more about it, but I just wanted to bring up the issue.
Sharon, thank you so much. Those are a couple of wonderful points. And for those of you who don't have your chat open, I just want to point out that Mary just wrote that she takes part in a monthly Zoom Death Cafe, third Monday of the month at 4:30. And it's sponsored by the Koch Funeral Home or Koch Funeral Home in State College, PA. And you can probably find info online if you're interested. I would imagine death cafes are something that would be actually pretty well suited to a Zoom format, although being together in person, oh, how much we all are looking forward to doing that again, right? But and Sharon, your point about medical aid in dying, some people used to refer to this as physician-assisted suicide, but the medical aid in dying is legal in about 6 states now, I think, around the country. And there's an active cohort in Massachusetts working to make it available here for those. So thank you so much. Are you raising your hand again, Sharon?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's nothing like physician-assisted suicide.
Right.
It's nothing like that, because the people who for medical aid in dying, they want to live, but it's the illness that is killing them.
Correct.
Not so it's not suicide at all.
Right.
And
No, that's how I was just saying, yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to say it wasn't the doctor doesn't give them the medication either. You have to take it yourself, and you decide when you want to do that. But it just gives a bad name to medical aid in dying.
You're right. I apologize. I shouldn't have actually correlated
because
them.
it's nothing like that. Yeah. I just wanted to correct that part.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. So James, thank you again for the invitation. Eileen, thank you both for kind of managing the tech on this, and my thanks to Ron and to CCALS and all the amazing work that you continue to do and have done for so long. And thank you to each of you for being on this call this evening. I hope that there was something useful for you to take away. If there was, please share it widely. We say steal shamelessly and share generously. It's out there for you to use as you wish. And may we all continue to get closer to the sun and spring and get some more light in our lives as these days progress. Thank you for being here tonight. And if you need to be in touch or have more questions, the Conversation Project is there for you. And I know that James and Eileen and Ron are there for you as well.
And Shannon is too. Shannon Carey is one of our care liaisons, and she joined us in the middle. So I just wanted to say hi to Shannon.
Hey, Shannon, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Rosemary, for a wonderful presentation. Really powerful material. And I love the way you said it. I think you maybe said it last time as well as this time, but just that these conversations are actually liberating and spiritually fulfilling in some way, and help us to awaken to the moment by moment opportunity that being alive really is, and that death could come at any time to any of us. And yet here we are, moment by moment, choosing to live with that understanding, and maybe that changes some of our decisions.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. And we will have this recording available if you would like to watch it again, or if you would want to share it with a friend. We'll send you a link, and have a wonderful evening. I'm going to shut the recording off now.
Thank you, Rosemary. It was very good.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Rosemary.